Please welcome to the stage Paul Verhoeven.
Thank you very much.
So I think most people here haven't seen Elle since the first screening is tomorrow. We'll talk a little bit about the film, but I think we won't get into too much detail so as to not give anything away. But I thought maybe you could start by just talking about this being your first French film. Your career up till now is sort of more or less evenly split between Holland and Hollywood. What was it like working in France for the first time?
It was wonderful, in fact. I mean, of course, I was very scared because of language and culture. So it took me some time to adapt to making a film in a language that was really not mine anymore.
You were fluent in French before starting
yeah, I
the
had
project?
been living in France when I was 17, but that is 60 years ago, so not much of that was left. And so I went to a crash course, French, and for a week, and then I jumped into the water there. So it went very well, you know. I think doing the directing in French for a crew of 40, 50 people gave me a lot of respect, because I didn't force all these people to speak English. I mean, so I felt that it would be strange to force a French crew that basically, yeah, of course they speak English to a certain degree, but to force them really to speak French, to speak English. And so I thought that I should force myself to speak French.
In some ways, I think it's fitting that you ended up eventually making a film in France. The French critics have always been, I think, very supportive of your work, even many...
Showgirls, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Showgirls in particular. I think I was going back and looking at some of the reviews.
The French were the first one to see that it was a masterpiece, isn't it?
Yeah, and it took the rest of the world a while to catch up.
Cahiers du cinéma, Jacques Rivette.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that struck me about Elle was that it didn't undergo this sort of delayed process of appreciation, which some of your other films have been subjected to, like Showgirls and Starship Troopers. And if you look at Elle on paper or even on the screen, it's a film that could be looked at as quite provocative, and it has the ambiguities of your other films. Right. But in Cannes, I think people were very willing to engage with those complexities and not attack the film, which I think could have been possible.
Yeah, so probably the film turned out to be a bit different than if you read the script. I mean, as you know, we tried to make this movie in the first place in United States. I mean, that was our first idea. And so I started to work with an American scriptwriter, David Burke, to write a script that where the French film was it was based on a French book, and that was situated in Paris. And so we translated or transformed everything into a same story, but situated in Chicago or Boston or something like that. And that script was written, and then we found out that neither from a financial point of view, say like a co-production or whatever, but especially from an artistic point of view, it was absolutely impossible based on that script and people reading that script to find an actress, American actress that wanted to do it. It was I didn't think about it at all at the beginning, but it turned out to be that way. We approached several what you would call A-class actresses, and there was a rigorous no. Certainly not. So,
were you told on what grounds? Maybe we should. People don't know. Elle is a film about a woman who. I think I should end there because I think that's maybe the best description of the film.
Go ahead.
It's also no. I think Elle is a film about a woman who, among other things, is dealing with the aftermath of a sexual assault.
Rape.
Okay, rape. Okay.
That's the word. And sure, and I think the problem with the reading a script, which is still still not a movie. Yeah? It's a blueprint for a movie. But the third act of the movie, in an American way, you would have expected. At the end of the second act, the man that rapes her is has a mask, so she doesn't know who did it. At the end of the second act, she finds out who did it. And then I think in American, let's say, cinematic thinking, the third act would in general be about the revenge, isn't it? It would be now her basically punishing the rapist. She does not. She does something the contrary, in fact. So that was probably the problem, I think. Not so much. Of course, rape is a very important issue at the moment, isn't it? It's always every day in the newspapers. But I think it was not about that. It was not about that. It was really about the lack of revenge that made people hesitate, refuse to do it. Yeah.
Would you have made the same film in the U.S.? Do you think? How do you think Elle would have turned out had an American actress said yes?
In retrospect, basically, it should not have been done in the United States. When I see basically how this movie is now coming together in the French culture, and especially the presence of Isabelle Huppert, I think the presence of Isabelle Huppert, if you will see the movie, is really what makes it work. What makes you accept the strange road she takes. Because you believe her, because she's authentic, even if it's something that you would in general not do. With her, you believe her, and I think that is what she brings to the movie is so special and so unheard of and unseen that I doubt if it could have been done, could have been made anywhere else than in Paris with Isabelle Huppert. So that's what I think now. But apparently, a year ago, I saw it in a different way. Yeah.
In terms of how the film approaches the subject of rape, I'm wondering if you gave a lot of thought to. I think your previous answer suggests that you did, to how rape is typically depicted, not the act itself, but how rape is situated within a narrative film.
Yeah, but apparently the film is really not jumping into the discourse about rape.
No, I don't think your film does, but I feel like
no.
I don't. But I think were you thinking about how cinema deals with that?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean,
no, but like rape, you see rape in. Okay, like for instance, I think in Black Book, I think it's a film that is aware of how the Holocaust is portrayed, and I'm wondering if, like with Elle, were you aware of how just what you were saying about revenge? Like how rape generally.
I didn't think about revenge. I read the book, and basically in the book there is no revenge. In fact, there is ultimately you could say there is divine revenge, if you want to.
Okay. I don't think we should. Yeah.
But I didn't think about that really. Neither when I was doing Black Book, it was a story basically, and I didn't try to say something specific about the Holocaust or something at all. I think that it was a narrative.
I don't think we want to give too much more away about Elle for people who haven't seen it, but can you just say a little bit about working with Isabelle Huppert and how do you direct somebody like Isabelle in a role like this, which is so complex in a moment to moment.
Saying nothing, to be honest. I don't think we had any dialogue, Isabelle and I, about character or about psychology or about what the essence of the movie was, or none. We were talking a lot about her dress of the day, that the color, how long, and all that stuff, the hairstyle, the color of the hair. I mean, how, and then basically. The choreography of the scene, basically when she was among other actors, how she would walk and to the left and to the right and sit down and get up and not too fast and something like that. We didn't talk about rape. We did it. She came to the set. We did it. We shot it. I said, well, this, that, so, boom, yeah. I mean, it sounds strange, but I trusted her completely. I've trusted her intuition. I think as a woman, she would anyhow more about her feelings than I do. And I let her go. I gave her all freedom possible, and was often amazed by the intensity and the audacity of her acting. Often it was that I thought, okay, now the scene is done or the shot is done. I should say cut, and I could not say cut. I could not, because she was still continuing and continuing, and all that stuff is in the movie. So it was as if we knew exactly what we are doing, but we didn't have to talk about it in any way. It's the truth, you know. So, and she will tell you exactly the same story.
Is that how you typically work with actors, or can you only do that with Isabelle Huppert?
No, I think that, although I trust actors, of course, to know better at the moment of shooting, to know better how to express themselves than I do, you know. Of course, that's why they do it and not me. I don't do it. But in fact, this was unique because I think, and I have seen Isabelle saying this, if we would have started to talk about the psychology and the development of her, well, there is not really development in this movie. I mean, this is not absence of development. I mean, I think the person that you see in the beginning is as mysterious as the person they see at the end of the movie. I don't think you have any... she's authentic, you believe her, you believe in the character, but you cannot really understand her completely.
Just to come back to move on to your other films and to something we just touched on briefly with Showgirls. Why do you think it's taken some time for the culture or the critics to catch up with some of your films? Showgirls. It's not just Showgirls. Starship Troopers was a very misunderstood film, especially in America, and I think RoboCop was read fairly superficially at the time, but I think this much more sophisticated takes on it have emerged. Why do you think it's taken time?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's how you start something like that. But in all honesty, I'm guessing. I think perhaps it was too cryptic, especially in the case of Starship Troopers. You could say that our political position was cryptic. Of course, and we were trying to tell that these people, with their nearly pseudo-fascist or Nazi uniforms and attitudes, were perhaps your heroes, but by the way, they were also fascist. That was the idea. And that was it's based on our battle, our fight with the novel of Robert Heinlein, because that is in fact pretty militaristic and even proto-fascist. And of course we didn't want to do that, but on the other hand we wanted to tell that story. So I think we were really trying to tell the people that yes, of course these are heroes, but. And I think that was not understood, I mean, there's a lot of, let's say, shots in the movie that I borrowed from a documentary film by Leni Riefenstahl in the early 30s, Triumph of the Will, which was basically about the Nuremberg gatherings of Adolf Hitler. And I gathered shots. I was really trying to tell the audience or the critic or whatever, of course, I borrow from Leni Riefenstahl because I want to tell you that these people that you might like and that are very sympathetic, that are really sympathetic in some way, that you should not completely follow them. And I think that was used against the movie because that was, in the eyes of a lot of critics, it was like me saying, this is great. And I was saying, this is, but yeah, they are great, but the background is not so great. So I think at that time was not understood in any way. I mean, it was really attacked and all over the place. And I was amazed, you know, because I thought I had been made it very clear that you shouldn't really trust them, the heroes. Well, that's unusual perhaps in American filmmaking, but that's what we tried to do. And yeah, took some time to convince people that there was another layer there, isn't it?
How did you convince the studio to give you $100 million for that film?
Well, the money basically we spent, and I don't think they got it really back. No.
It's interesting that you use the word cryptic, because I think in many ways you're actually a very direct filmmaker, and I don't know that Starship Troopers is a cryptic film necessarily. Maybe there's just
apparently it was at that time.
I'm just wondering if there's maybe just certain levels of irony that were difficult to perceive, and also just the question of identification, which I think your films always raise, like how is the audience supposed to identify with the character?
Well, I mean, you use the word irony, but I mean, irony is a lost art, isn't it? Nearly. I mean, irony is not well understood. It's not really functioning too much in the visual arts, and even in the normal discourse. So I think if you're ironic, you risk, of course, that people might take it, might not see the irony. And if you don't see the irony, then of course it's just pretty brutal and in your face wrong. And so, but why it took so? Yeah, I'm glad that that ultimately people start to see what it was really. I mean, how can you doubt it when you see one of your main characters coming in a black Nazi uniform and say, well guys, great, I mean, a lot of people died, but there was nothing we could do, and we sent you in again and you might die again, you know, all your friends might die. You would think that people would think, oh, but no, they didn't see it.
You had, I think, a pretty remarkable run in Hollywood, from, you know, I guess RoboCop to Hollow Man, and can you say a bit about your? I guess first, two questions. First of all, I'm wondering if you miss anything about working in Hollywood.
Sure, because there is an enormous amount of talent here. And I think probably for me it was, when I came here, it was wonderful to find out not only about the talent in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. So of course you come in here into a kind of a paradise of talent. And if you cannot make movies here anymore, it happened, of course, in the last 10, 15 years. Yeah, you feel it's sad. Yeah, sure. And of course, and then but then when you go back to Europe and it works, then yeah, well, you try to live with what's possible, isn't it? Mm. So the opportunities that I got in Europe were, let's say, to me, more interesting than what I could do in the United States during these last 10 years.
So you think the films that you made in that period would not be possible in the Hollywood climate of the last 15 years or so?
The European movies I made?
No, I mean like the Hollywood movies that you made in the 80s and 90s they would not have been possible.
No, I don't think you could do Starship Troopers now. No. I mean, if you compare the new edition, of RoboCop or Total Recall, what is evident to me that all these elements of, let's say, irony and a light touch and a wink and this and that were all taken out. Yeah, if you see the remakes, in fact, I mean, it's straight on And I think both stories are a little bit ridiculous, and if you take them completely seriously, I think then it's really horrible, you know. So if something is lost, perhaps not forever, but seems to be lost a little bit in Los Angeles, yeah. But I survived, you know, so I'm fine, you know. And if there would be an American movie that I like, I would immediately do it, you know. There's, as I said, there's so much talent here, and people are so good. So it was wonderful to do it as long as I could, and if we can perhaps I can make a comeback. I heard somebody told me that Americans like success. Somebody told me, it was European, so he said Americans like success, but if you fall down, you go down, that's even better. But the best thing is coming back. And I think that's probably true, you know, and that's not true for Americans, for everybody. I mean, there is something beautiful in coming back. So if you have a good project, yes.
So maybe let's move on then to what was at the time perceived as a big failure, your biggest failure, Showgirls. You mentioned Jacques Rivette in his, he had a great line about this film, which I think you're probably familiar with, where he talked about how Showgirls is about surviving in a world populated by assholes, and he identified that as your philosophy, and applied to, it's a line that could actually be applied to quite a few of your films.
Well, there are a lot of assholes, yes. This species is not completely okay, huh?
I think we agree.
I say going to put some question marks behind the animal human. No, I think the talent for violence is staggering, yes. And basically we see that every day, of course, yeah. So I don't know if what Rivette said of wrote is fine, but because in fact everybody in Showgirls is kind of not okay. Yes, even the main character, of course, is sometimes really cruel. Yes, and there's only one good person, that is her girlfriend Molly, basically, and then she's the one that gets punished. So it's all characters are kind of a lot of negativity, but it's a very cynic movie, I think. Yeah.
It's also one. But
it's Vegas, huh?
It's one of your most realistic films, wouldn't you say, Showgirls?
Yes, it's the one that we did an enormous amount of research for Showgirls. And I certainly didn't do any research for Starship Troopers or whatever. You know? But no, we went, the writer, Joe Esterhaus, and I went to Vegas for weeks and weeks to talk to everybody. We talked at 60, 70 interviews with dancers and the producers of the shows and everybody that was there. And I think a lot of the things you see in the movie are based on these interviews. So it's certainly the most realistic movie that I made in the United States, yeah. But on the other hand, of course, what we did is making everything hyperbolic, you know, everything is over the top. They act over the top, the colors are over the top, the lights are over the top, the movements are over the top, and I'm not sure that was really a good decision. That might have alienated a lot of people, but everything is so, is pushed. Yeah, I thought Vegas is like that, and we're going to use that as a style element. Yeah, even the camera is always moving, and this and that, and such and so. And so perhaps that was also, let's say, from at that point for people here in the United States, perhaps it was also perhaps seen as an attack on Vegas, but that would then be an attack on the United States. And Rivette would have, of course, as a Frenchman, would have been really like that, yeah.
You were the first person in history to show up in person to accept the Razzie Award for Showgirls. Why did you do that? Do you still have it? The
Yes,
award?
yes, I do. It was made out of clay, huh? And painted in the color of gold. But I have it, yeah, sure. And I think that was a very liberating experience, in fact, to go there. I mean, and it sounds funny what I say, but it is really, I mean, I've said that before. There is, of course, this very famous words of Jesus saying, if they slap you on the right cheek, turn the left. Well, that's what happened. And I can assure you that Jesus was completely right. Because it started, of course, when I entered there and they didn't know I was there, then they reacted to the movie. They showed parts of the movie and they were all yelling and screaming and like that. And then at a certain moment when they realized, then they say, well, and the worst director or whatever, it was 7. I got worst director, worst actress, worst music, etc. So I had to walk forward 7 times to. But I had only one of the one Razzie, so I had to give it back and then get it again. And I'm not fooling you; it's really true. But what happened is, because I was there and because I came forward and speeched and whatever, they, when I had to come forward again and again, they were so animated. Everybody thought was so wonderful, and that felt like I said at the beginning. And you laughed, but it was really like liberating, like leaving everything behind me and saying, okay, it's done. The circle is full, and this is. It was at the end was a wonderful evening. I can assure you. Everybody was happy. Me too.
What do you make of the afterlife of Showgirls? In a way, I mean, obviously, it's a film that has been, as I said, rehabilitated. But I feel like the people who appreciate it today still I seem appreciate it for different reasons. I mean, there's some people who think it's a serious film, and there are some people who read it more as a camp or a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's serious in a way that it is really telling you about a lot of people that are unpleasant. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly telling everything in Vegas is about money. In fact, saying more precisely, sex and money is the same. Mm. Sex is not for, let's say, for babies there, but sex is for something else. Sex is for babies, of course. We all know that. We don't say that, but the evolution basically pushes us in that direction, you know. And we cannot, and invented sex to get what they want, the baby. You might not believe that, but it's really how the evolution works, you know. It's Darwin.
If I remember correctly, I mean the rape scene in Showgirls is, I think, the rape scene in Showgirls is even more, I think, upsetting and troubling than the one in Elle. It's I think it's, you know,
because the character in Elle refuses to be a victim,
right?
And there clearly the woman that's raped there in Showgirls is completely victimized.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah, and has no defense system. I mean, really.
So if to look at, we'll move on to the Dutch films next, but just to look at the Hollywood phase. I don't know if you ever saw them that way, but if just with in hindsight and looking at them as a body of work, I think they're pretty amazing commentaries on American society, even if they were not always necessarily intended that way. I don't know if you. Showgirls and Starship Troopers may be the most obvious examples. But did you ever think you were making comments on American culture, American society while you were working here?
Here? Sure, yeah. but not in the beginning. In RoboCop, I think if there are of course
it could be read
comments
that way.
Yeah, but really, to be honest, that came from the writers. I came from Holland and they presented me the script and I didn't even know exactly the politics, so I used a lot of the cues they gave me. And that's, let's say, when I was doing Showgirls or Starship Troopers, I knew much more about what was happening here and had much more studied politics, the politics of the United States, interior but also foreign. Then I think my comments or my let's say, different level that is in Showgirls and in Starship Troopers, that was more consciously brought in by me, and it was, of course, came from the writers of these movies. Anyhow, but I knew what I was talking about then when they were, let's say, putting critical questions there, critical remarks. So, so it's something that you, of course, but on the other hand, basically, if you say these a movie like Starship Troopers, it's not basically that we set out to do that. It really was, as we were working, I remember that we were continuously laughing about our own ideas, you know. It was done in a very light-hearted way, not like we sit here and we go to criticize aspects of American life or whatever. That was not the idea at all. It happened as we were working. And it came out, and basically, but we never put it in let's say, as a dogma or let's say a revelation that has to be given to people. We were just pointing it out and had fun with it. I mean, don't take it too seriously, you know. I mean, it was never, let's say, conceived in a serious way, like we going to do this and this is our political statement and etc. I hate that stuff anyhow, so basically, but if you do it and it comes in, I mean, like all the kids having weapons and asking for more bullets and whatever, that was basically, that came out when we were working and writing, and so because it's, oh yeah, of course, yeah, that's true. I mean, of course it's not true, really true, but it is saying something about what all Europeans, of course, are always a bit amazed about, the possibility to have so many weapons, you know. So.
I did actually want to ask one more question about an American film, which is Hollow Man, which is the last film that you made in Hollywood, and I'm wondering if that was for you like an unsatisfying experience. I actually think the film is. It's a little overshadowed by your other American films, but I think it's kind of
because it has no soul and there is a base, and I think it's about nothing. I mean, evidently. But no, I feel that after of course, it had to do with, I felt after doing the movie, not immediately because I was still interested in all the special effects and all that, but after making the movie 1 or 2 years later, I really felt that this was what you would call a real studio movie, and that I had not been able to express myself in any other way. You know, that I mean, in all these American movies, if you see the Dutch movies, that's all realistic. All the movies that I made in Holland are based on biographies, autobiographies, and coming to the United States, I started in science fiction and did most of it as science fiction. Possibly it was an intuitive choice because I didn't know enough about the United States. And when you do science fiction, you can then basically you can say, okay, it's the future, you know, it will be that way. And I think I protected myself against my non-knowledge of the United States by making science fiction. So I lost track of what I want to say, but
talking about we were talking about Hollow Man, but
oh, Hollow Man. Well, yeah, sure, you're right. With Hollow Man, I had the feeling that I could not put my signature on it in any way. Originally, the idea was, what would you do if you would be invisible? Which is a statement by Plato, and Plato says you would do the most horrifying things because you have. That was his theory, and that I want to make that movie. But then I found out, first of all, that because of, let's say, the rights to the Invisible Man, basically they were, I think, at Universal, that making Hollow Man was, that we could nearly not leave the laboratory. I mean, because if we would go outside, we would be falling in on the right situation of the real Invisible Man, the one that was the Universal movie. So that was restrained already. And top of that, let's say, I wanted to go much further with what you would do, Invisible. And the studio felt, of course, that it was too much. Or that should be more restrained and not to the extremity that I liked to do. And so I felt that I had in no way, at the end of the road, I felt that I had not giving this movie, like I just said, a signature. And I felt that I should stop that and find something different and go into a different direction. And that's why I fell back on the script, an idea that we had developed in the 80s in Holland, which ultimately became the Black Book. So I jumped on that movie to forget about, with Hollow Man, you could say, two big words probably, but that I lost my soul there and I found it back in Black Book. So I found again that I was doing something what I thought was important or interesting or whatever instead of the studio.
I take it you haven't seen Hollow Man recently, but I watched it again recently, and I think it's actually quite good. It's there's some very good things. There's some very good things in it, but it's also, I think, a real Donald Trump era film. I think it's like if you think Starship Troopers anticipated Iraq, I think Hollow Man kind of anticipated Trump.
Well, I think we foresaw Trump already with Starship Troopers. Huh?
Yeah, well, sure. But okay, let me just ask you to talk about your Dutch phase a little bit. There was also, I understand why, after Hollow Man and this wanting to reconnect with your roots with Black Book, but why did you leave Holland in the first place after, a very successful run? Although I know there was some, Spetters was not an easy film for you with the response.
No, Spetters was bashed by the press. It was like Showgirls, but of course, it was a very successful movie. Yeah.
And so was The Fourth Man.
The Fourth Man was, that was a very cheap movie, basically. No, there was all these movies were, some of them were absolutely very commercial, in fact, especially Turkish Delight, but also Soldier of Orange and others. But the more success you had in Holland at that time, there was a very left-wing, let's say, government, and the committees that in Holland and in Europe, all films are made with partially 30, 40, 50, 60% of government money, isn't it? Otherwise there would not be any film industry in the whole of Europe. And these committees were extremely left-wing in Holland at that time. I would call it fascist left. And so everything had to be in the direction of their dogmatic ideas, and so they hated my movies, and it was impossible to get money of the government anymore because they refused, because they felt that my movies were decadent and perverted and had no social agenda, and there was really no depth in it and whatever. And so, at a certain moment, I couldn't make movies anymore, and then there were continuously, let's say, requests from the United States to come over. Please, you have to leave your country behind because it's too small for you or something. Anyhow, so that happened all, and at a certain moment then RoboCop came, and especially, it's really my wife who pushed me because I was afraid to go there here. And she said, okay, I'll take care of the kids and you go to make the movie and we'll join you and let's see if it works in the United States. I mean, in fact, but that's well known, I think. When I read the RoboCop script for the first time, I thought it was horrible. And then basically, so I threw it away, and then she read it, and she said, I think you make a mistake, you should read it again. So I think I was very lucky, you know, in both cases, that basically that I reread RoboCop and that I came to the United States, because I feel that the movies I made here, I could never have made in Europe at all, of course. And I mean, it's sad that I have for 14 years not made a movie in the United States. I would love to.
When you read the RoboCop script, did it strike you at the time already as having sort of parallels with the Jesus story, or was that something that you added?
I certainly was not in the script. No. But I felt from the beginning. I think I took the script ultimately when I had after rereading it. Then I took it because of this. Of the biblical implications, in fact, I should say, especially the scene, for example, when he goes to his house and gets these flashes about another life. That for me was the really lost paradise. In fact, his family, his child, and whatever, that he gets these flashes, and on the other hand, I felt that when Murphy in the beginning basically is killed. I had a feeling that, and then resurrected. Of course, it is a metaphor there. You know, of course, he gets really killed in the most horrible way, especially in the original version, and which is like a crucifixion. And then basically, then he's resurrected and he's another person, isn't it? Even if you look precisely in the Bible, if you know the New Testament or sometimes read it, then you will see that Jesus basically after his death, when he's basically resurrected, doesn't say anything anymore. In fact, very simple words: give me some food, or give me a fish, or how are you doing? Well, that's RoboCop, huh? He's programmed, and so there were all these. I mean, I put it in a light way, but there were really all these things that I felt basically with my interest in Jesus. I'm not Christian, so that you know, I'm not a Christian, but I have this interest, and that came into the movie in a very organic way. It just came in, and I used it because I felt these things that are part of this wonderful mythology, of course, that is called Christianity.
Right, we're going to take some questions from the audience. I think there are mic runners. Are there mic runners? Okay, there's a hand here.
I'm curious about your, in your formative years, your cinematic influences in terms of the great cinematic masters, and in particular I'm interested in your opinion of someone who I would consider stylistically the polar opposite of you, Robert Bresson.
Well, yeah, he's not an influence, no. Although Haneke is. I'm a big fan of Haneke. I would never be able to do that, you know. But I think I'm mostly influenced. I think in the years that you can, that's still possible to accept other people. By Hitchcock for sure, which is very clear in Basic Instinct. And all along the way, I still study Hitchcock. I think is from a visual point of view, extremely close to me. Then there is Fellini, because of all the camera moves. And I think these probably Buñuel because of the thematic material and the way that he, I mean, if you see Elle, then you would realize that the closest movie to Elle that has been made would probably be Belle de Jour, which is a Buñuel's movie. These are the influences, I think. Of course, there was a strong influence of the Nouvelle Vague when I was in my 20s. And I still think that there is a movie of Truffaut, Jules and Jim, that is still absolutely marvelous. But when I realized that I was 7 when the war we were occupied in Holland by the Germans, and in 1945, when we were liberated by the Allies, then we got all these American movies that had not been there for 5-6 years, isn't it? So I was inundated as 7-8 years old kid with American movies. I mean, everything, all the westerns, also the early science fiction, but also Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello and stuff. That probably influenced me in a completely different way that I might have used when I came to the United States. Without really thinking about that, I'm sure that my, let's say, being overwhelmed in these years after the war, I think I went 3 times a week to see American movies. So I'm sure that ultimately when I came here, that there was some basis there, you know, I mean, when I was, as I said, when I was in my 20s, that was wiped away because suddenly it was the Nouvelle Vague, the new wave, the French. So I forgot about the American movies, but then they disappeared and then they came back. Yeah, but I appreciate the movies, but I no.
I saw your last film, Elle, 3 times, but probably I didn't get it yet. But my question is about this whole concept. Is this film about European history? Her father is the past, she is the present, and her son is the future. And anyway, I have a second question. What do you think about European future in general? How do you see it?
A European movie?
Well, I guess you're talking about Elle, right? Yeah. Is Elle about European history, and what do you think is the future of Europe? Big question.
Well, let's talk first about the future of the United States, isn't it? That's the most scary thing in the world, I think. And I think Europe will follow the United States, I think. So that we might hope that things go the right way, you know. But I think, of course, there's a very important things in Europe, but it is a secondary power. Yeah, sure. It's not dictating much anymore, is it? While the United States or Russia or China do. So it's a continent that has a lot of to offer, but it's a lot of the past that they offer. Well, that's what I feel, you know, the dynamics are a bit gone, yeah.
Hi, so I was really interested in the story of you looking at RoboCop the first time and then saying no and throwing it in the trash. And then the second time, you're like, I have to make this and I have to go to the United States. What about that second time? What did you catch on that second time reading the script that you didn't catch the first time around that made you say yes?
I think probably the elements that I was pointing out, that there was some depth to all these things that at first view looked like action, bang, 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 shoot, 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 you know. And then I started to see the metaphors of the crucifixion and the resurrection, and then the paradise lost. And these were, it was really the scene basically that made me say yes to the movie. Was really the scene where RoboCop comes into his old house and then gets these flashes of a past that he doesn't even know about anymore. That's not him anymore, but still there. And that was when I read that scene. Then I basically called, let's say, Mike Medavoy of Orion and say, I'll do it. So it was that was really what made me the transcendence of the whole movie, but expressed in very specific scenes, not all the time, of course. But that was the reason that I thought there's something there that is just different, that has a layer that I have never been able to touch in Europe, but that basically is close to me and that I feel as important to the human race. If Meryl could do it, we don't know, of course. If she would like to do it, is another case, isn't it? But no, you're right. I think, and in my opinions, I would even say Isabelle Huppert is the only person in the world that could have done this. Yeah, but of course, you don't know. You have to do it to find out. But I think it would have been very difficult to find somebody else. And of course, there are people like Meryl Streep that would absolutely be able to do it. If they would have liked to do it, might have been different. Yeah, Isabelle really. Don't forget that Isabelle Huppert was with this movie before I was there. Isabelle Huppert had read the book and had already called the writer of the book, Philippe Dijon, and the producer, Saïd Ben Saïd, to say that she wanted to do that movie. And then basically she had even discussed with Saïd that I might be the director. But then we, Saïd and I, in our arrogance perhaps, thought that we should make it to an American movie. And so we tried. And then we had to come back after 3 months or so to Isabelle and say, sorry, Isabelle, you will still want to do it. and she is totally audacious. She basically, we knew that she had no problems with the material at all. And basically, which was very different than what happened here in the United States, yeah. But it's true, we didn't give it to Meryl Streep. We gave it to, I won't name the names basically, but we gave it really to 6 or 7 American actresses of what you would call A-level, yeah.
Mr. Verhoeven, I love the... I loved Elle. I loved how it blended comedy and drama, and how you described the RoboCop and Total Recall sequels as lacking that sort of irony that was in their predecessors. You've said before that you think Hollywood doesn't have enough interesting scripts right now. What would you say is the missing element? Is it that light touch, or is it something bigger?
No, the light touch is something that I like. But you can, of course, there are still interesting movies in the United States. You know, I think, for example, The Big Short was a really good movie. Should have won the Oscar, I think. So, of course, but there's a very special group that makes these kind of movies. The director has a group around him with Ingmar Bergman. Way. So of course there are still good scripts, but apparently they didn't come to me. But if Woody Allen would write the script for me, then I would immediately do it, you know. Yeah.
Mr. Verhoeven. You've worked with the late, great Jerry Goldsmith on a number of your films, and even on the Basic Instinct commentary, you mentioned some of the incidental music that's used also to tell the story. I was wondering, how immersed are you in the music supervision and picking the songs in your film now, especially, but even back then, if you could talk about that.
Did I miss?
How immersed are you in the music, the choosing of your film, the music?
Music. Well, I think music. You're talking about music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I missed that in the beginning. Sorry. And I feel that music is extremely important, and I try to work with composers that if I find a composer that I like, yeah, then I try to work with him as much as possible. And so in the United States, I worked really with two composers, which is Basil Polidouris and Jerry Goldsmith. And they both ultimately died. And that's when I started to look at another composer, and I found an English composer, a woman, Anne Dudley, who did Black Book and Elle. But for me, I think what can happen with a good composer is that when you put a score under the film, that the whole film goes up. It's like it gets a level. If the music works, then the film gets 30–40% better. I mean, if you look at, for example, if you hear the music from Lawrence of Arabia, I mean, they can imagine if that music would not have been there, that would have made such a difference. And I think, for me, I'm a big fan of whatever kind of music, and it be classical or more nowadays, let's say rock and roll or whatever. And I use it all the time, and I think it's one of the most important elements of my movies, because I feel that with the music I can make everything better. So for me, music is the soundtrack, but certainly the musical soundtrack is of utmost importance. So did I answer the question?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think we can take a couple more. Yes, back there. And we'll go there first and then.
Thank you. I'm so pleased you're here. I almost don't have a question, but I do, and we're kind of on the subject anyway. Could you talk a little bit about your planned film on the life of Jesus and what has happened, or maybe is still happening with that? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. That would take an hour or so. But I wrote a book about Jesus, huh? And it's translated in English, so you can buy it. And that's a little bit what I would like to do. I have been trying now with 3 different scriptwriters. I have been trying to write an outline. I mean, and till now I have failed. I feel that every time the 3 different writers, not simultaneously, one after the other, over many years, and I have still not found a solution to my own book. But of course, the Jesus that I describe in the book is, of course, is a human being. So it would be about a man. It would be Jesus the man, not Jesus the Son of God or this or that. It would be Jesus the man. And so I would, if you read the book, you will understand that. But it has been, let's say, very difficult. Perhaps I'm too close to the book or whatever, you know, and that or I have the feeling that the writers that I approached, and they all 3 are very good, are in awe of the book, because it goes so much into a different direction than normal, isn't it? That they think this is exactly what he wants. And of course I want something else. I want somebody that uses the book but also thinks, but now I'm going to write the script, yeah, instead of Paul wants this. So that I cannot explain why it didn't work, but I'm still working on it. Yes, sure, absolutely.
Have there been any other films about Jesus that come close to what you would like to do?
Sure. The Life of Brian, for example. It's probably the best one. But I have a lot of respect of a movie that Pasolini did, which is the Gospel of Matthew. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it takes us. It really tells the story of the Gospel of Matthew, and Pasolini, of course, was an atheist and Marxist, but when they asked him how could you do that, basically he said, well, you know, it's a great story, and then he used his Marxist agenda to put it over Jesus. So I think this movie of Pasolini is a really very strong Jesus, very powerful, very, let's say, violent even. So I mean, I think he touched something really great, Pasolini there. But it's still the real gospel, isn't it? So I mean, Jesus resurrected and all that stuff. Yeah. That didn't happen, unfortunately, I think.
We can take a final question. Was there something over here?
Do you think that American directors should go to Europe to make movies if they can't get movies made here? Like John Waters, for instance, had a retrospective at Lincoln Center a year or two ago, and he was talking about how he just cannot get funding for movies by American studios. They just will not give him enough to make the movies he wants to make.
It's not that in fact, I have never been a director that wants to make a movie that is mine. And especially I always made movies about things that were anyhow there. And when I was in the United States, I had many plans about movies, and they never came to fruition. So I decided that it was better to concentrate on the films that basically the scripts that I liked, although it was not my idea to do that movie. I didn't want to do. I had no idea to do, let's say, RoboCop. It was the script came to me, and I thought, okay, yeah. After advice of my wife, of course, I thought, okay, I can do that. Yeah, that is interesting. And it was all the movies like that. My whole life, I think I made movies because somebody came with an idea. I liked the idea. It just was my choice the choice was important, but it's not that I tried ever to express myself like what French call an auteur. I mean, I'm not Dostoevsky or something like that. In film, I really have always based myself on things that were already existent. So I think for me it doesn't matter if it's in the United States or Europe or France, you know, as long as somebody gives me a script or a book that I like and that I can be enthusiastic about, and then basically I'll do it.
We're going to wrap it up, but I want to encourage people to try to come to Elle the next few days and also for our retrospective next month. Paul, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.